For decades, rumors have circulated about secret encounters between the United States military and something not of this world. From whispered accounts of crashed objects in remote deserts to strange lights tracked by fighter jets, these stories have never fully disappeared. Some are dismissed as myths, others as deliberate misinformation. Yet, a small number remain disturbingly consistent, passed down quietly by military personnel who claim they witnessed events never meant to reach the public. One such story centers around an incident said to have taken place at a U.S. Air Force Base in the late 1970s. Over time, it has become known among researchers as the McGuire Air Force Base encounter, an alleged case in which a non-human intruder was shot and killed during a security patrol. To understand why this story still refuses to fade, we must first look at the broader context in which it emerged. In early 2020, something unusual happened in Washington. Representatives from major international media outlets were invited to a series of briefings by the Pentagon, meetings that had not appeared on any public schedule. Journalists had been pressing for answers after leaked footage showed U.S. Navy pilots encountering objects that defied known flight physics. The videos showed unidentified craft accelerating instantly, making sharp turns without slowing and operating without visible propulsion. For months, these clips had circulated online in low quality, dissected frame by frame by civilian analysts. This time, however, the U.S. government confirmed something unprecedented. The footage was real, and the objects were officially classified as unidentified. While officials stopped short of calling them extraterrestrial, the message was unmistakable. Unknown technology had entered restricted military airspace, and the most powerful military on Earth could not explain it. To some, this felt like transparency. To others, it felt carefully controlled. A gradual release of information that hinted at much more hidden beneath the surface. Long before these confirmations, former service members had been telling a far more unsettling story. According to them, the military wasn't just observing unknown craft, it had been recovering them. Rumors spoke of secret facilities where wreckage was analyzed, of technology quietly reverse-engineered and fed into black-budget aerospace projects. Stealth coatings, advanced alloys, and even speculative gravity-defying concepts were, according to some insiders, inspired by recovered non-human technology. More controversial still were claims involving underground installations, vast sealed facilities connected by tunnel networks, housing not just machines, but biological entities. Some whistleblowers went so far as to allege joint human-non-human research programs and fatal confrontations between armed forces and unknown beings. Officially, all such claims were denied. Unofficially, the stories continued, often supported by individuals whose military records were verifiable. It is within this wider landscape of secrecy and suspicion that the McGuire incident must be examined. McGuire Air Force Base is located in Burlington County, New Jersey, adjacent to what was historically known as Fort Dix. Established during World War I, Fort Dix became one of the most important training and deployment centers in U.S. military history. Over time, a nearby airfield expanded into a full Air Force installation, operating alongside the Army base. Though technically separate, the two facilities functioned almost as one. Personnel crossed between them regularly, and only chain-link fencing marked the boundary. The surrounding terrain was largely undeveloped: pine forests, open fields, and long stretches of perimeter fencing broken only by runways and guard posts. At night, especially in winter, the area could feel isolated and eerily quiet. It was here, in the early hours of January 18th, 1978, that something unusual reportedly occurred. Shortly after midnight, personnel inside the McGuire Control Tower noticed an unexpected radar contact. At first, it wasn't alarming. Training flights were common, and radar anomalies weren't unheard of. But when the technicians checked the flight schedules, something didn't add up. No aircraft were authorized to be airborne in that sector at that time. One airman stepped onto the external balcony of the tower to scan the horizon. In the distance, near the boundary of Fort Dix, he noticed a faint reddish glow hovering low above the ground. It wasn't bright, more like a pulsing ember in the darkness. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, the light vanished. At that exact moment, the radar contact disappeared as well. The coincidence was unsettling enough that tower personnel contacted Fort Dix security, reporting the anomaly and requesting a patrol to investigate the perimeter. With that, the tower staff returned to their duties, unaware that they had just triggered a sequence of events that would echo through military folklore for decades. At Fort Dix, the response was casual. No alarms were raised. No teams mobilized. Instead, a single military police officer was dispatched to drive the perimeter and check for anything out of place. For most of the patrol, nothing seemed unusual. Then, halfway along the fence line, the officer stopped his vehicle. Hovering just a few feet above the ground was an object roughly the size of his patrol car. It was metallic, cylindrical, and completely silent. A soft red glow pulsed across its surface, rhythmic and unnatural, not like running lights, but more like a heartbeat. The officer lowered his window, listening. There was no engine noise, no hum, nothing but the wind. And then he heard footsteps. The sound came from the darkness beyond the patrol vehicle. Quick, uneven footsteps crunching against gravel and frozen ground. The military police officer leaned further out of his window, scanning the area illuminated by the faint red glow of the hovering object. Then he saw it. A lone figure was running toward the craft from the tree line. The light revealed only fragments. At first, a thin silhouette, unnatural in proportion, moving far faster than seemed possible over the rough terrain. In that split second, the officer's training took over. He assumed the worst: a foreign intruder, a spy, a breach of military security. He threw open the vehicle door, drew his sidearm, and fired a single warning shot into the air. "Stop where you are. Identify yourself." The response was immediate and terrifying. The hovering object shot straight upward, accelerating vertically, without hesitation, without sound. In less than a second, it vanished into the night sky, the red glow snapping off as if extinguished. Then bolted. Now running away from the officer, it disappeared into the darkness beyond the fence line. The MP grabbed his flashlight and gave chase, sprinting across the uneven ground, shouting repeated commands for the intruder to stop. The beam of the torch caught glimpses of the figure, long limbs pumping, body moving with an almost weightless agility. Then the impossible happened. The figure leaped. With a single bound, it vaulted high over the chain-link fence separating Fort Dix from McGuire Air Force Base, landing effortlessly on the other side. The officer skidded to a halt. Crossing the fence without authorization meant violating protocol, but what he saw next left no room for hesitation. The intruder was now sprinting across one of McGuire's runways, fully illuminated by the base lights. Raising his weapon, the MP took aim. 5 shots rang out. Several rounds struck the target in the torso. The figure collapsed instantly, hitting the concrete with a sickening finality. Adrenaline still surging, the officer rushed back to his vehicle and radioed the incident. He then drove to the main gate of McGuire Air Force Base, where security personnel, already alerted by the gunfire, allowed him entry. Together, they sped toward the runway. What they found there would haunt them. Lying motionless on the cold concrete was a body roughly the size of a small child, but nothing about it looked human. Its frame was thin, almost fragile, yet topped by a disproportionately large head. The face was mostly featureless. No visible nose, no ears, only 2 oversized almond-shaped eyes, jet black and glassy, staring lifelessly into the sky. The skin was unlike anything the men had ever seen, grayish, leathery, and textured, resembling reptile hide stretched tightly over bone. Then there was the smell. An overpowering stench filled the air, sharp and chemical, reminiscent of ammonia. Several guards instinctively stepped back, covering their noses. No one spoke. Each man standing there knew the same unthinkable question was forming in everyone's mind. What have we just killed? Several hours later, as the eastern sky began to lighten, a senior Air Force officer arrived on base for his shift. His name was George Filer. At the time, Filer served as a briefing officer, responsible for preparing intelligence summaries for senior commanders and political committees. As he approached the main gate around 4 a.m., he noticed an unusual sight. Multiple vehicles clustered on a runway, headlights still on. Curious, he asked one of the guards what was happening. The reply was delivered in a hushed tone. "Sir, a sentry shot an alien earlier tonight." Filer laughed, assuming it was gallows humor. Then he saw the aircraft. Descending through the fading darkness was a C-141 Starlifter, a massive military transport plane typically used for classified or high-priority missions. It was not normally stationed at McGuire, and certainly not scheduled for arrival at that hour. As the aircraft touched down and taxied across the runway, Filer felt a chill settle in. Maybe the guard hadn't been joking after all. Not long after arriving at his office, Filer was summoned to meet with his commanding officer. This time, the tone was serious. He was told the incident had occurred exactly as described, and that he was to gather statements from all involved personnel and prepare a formal briefing for higher command. Over the next several hours, Filer interviewed control tower staff, security personnel, and military police officers. Though exhausted, their accounts were consistent. Radar contact, a strange light, a pursuit, gunfire, a body. But when Filer attempted to obtain photographs taken at the scene, everything changed. His access was revoked. He was informed that he was no longer required to prepare the report. A different protocol had been activated. The message was clear. This was no longer his case. Through informal channels, Filer later learned that the body had been loaded onto the Starlifter under armed escort. Its destination was listed as Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, a facility long associated with classified aerospace research and unexplained recoveries. The military policeman who fired the shots was also flown out shortly afterward. He never returned to Fort Dix. No transfer orders were publicly recorded. No follow-up explanation was given. The runway was cleared. The base returned to normal operations, and officially, nothing had happened. If the body truly reached Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, then it hadn't just vanished. It had entered the heart of America's most secretive military research network. Wright-Patterson was no ordinary base. For decades, it had been surrounded by rumors, hidden hangars, underground labs, and materials recovered from incidents that officially never happened. To those familiar with military history, the name carried weight and fear. Within hours of the transport aircraft's arrival, the incident at Fort Dix McGuire was classified beyond routine protocol. Silence followed. No press release. No internal memo. No questions allowed. But silence has a way of cracking. George Filer couldn't let it go. As a briefing officer, he understood classified procedures, but this felt different. Files weren't just sealed. They were removed. Personnel weren't reassigned. They were disappeared from records. In the weeks that followed, Filer quietly reached out to contacts within the Air Force and intelligence community. Most refused to speak. A few offered cryptic warnings. Drop it. You're not cleared. Some things aren't meant to be known. Then one source, a civilian contractor who had worked briefly at Wright-Patterson, gave him a single sentence that would stay with him for years. They weren't surprised it was small. They were surprised it was alive when it arrived. According to fragments later shared off-record, the body recovered from the runway was not treated like a deceased intruder. It was handled like biological evidence. Medical teams in protective gear reportedly examined it in a restricted facility. The wounds caused by the gunfire were unlike anything they had seen. There was minimal bleeding. No identifiable organs in expected locations. Even more unsettling was the discovery that the being's internal structure didn't match known mammalian or reptilian biology. It was efficient, minimal, purpose-built, and then came the claim that changed everything. The being may not have died immediately. The location of the incident raised even more questions. The New Jersey Pine Barrens stretch for over 1 million acres, dense forest, sandy soil, and limited visibility. Over the years, the region has been associated with disappearances, strange lights, and cryptid sightings long before the Fort Dix incident. Local residents had reported glowing orbs drifting between trees. Hunters spoke of hearing footsteps that didn't match any animal. Pilots occasionally reported radar interference over the area. The military presence surrounding the Pine Barrens wasn't accidental. Fort Dix, McGuire Air Force Base, Naval Air Engineering Station, Lakehurst. 3 major military installations surrounding one vast, largely uninhabited forest. Coincidence or containment? When Filer began comparing notes, another disturbing pattern appeared. The Fort Dix encounter wasn't unique. Similar reports had surfaced quietly from other military bases across the world. Guards encountering small, fast-moving figures. Radar contacts with impossible flight characteristics. Rapid response teams arriving before official reports could be filed. Always the same outcome. No evidence. No witnesses willing to speak publicly. No records. And always the same destination whispered in the background. Wright-Patterson. Of course, not everyone believed the story. Skeptics argued that the figure could have been a child, a deformed animal, or a hallucination caused by stress and poor visibility. The radar contact might have been a glitch. The aircraft landing, coincidence. They pointed out the lack of photographs, autopsy reports, or physical proof. But believers countered with a simple question: why deploy a classified transport aircraft at dawn for a routine shooting? Why revoke clearances of officers whose job was to report incidents? Why erase paper trails instead of correcting them? Cover-ups weren't about hiding truth forever. They were about buying time. The military policeman who fired the shots became a focal point of speculation. According to unofficial accounts, he was debriefed extensively, placed under medical observation, and then reassigned to a different facility under a non-disclosure agreement. Some claimed he later suffered from severe psychological distress. Others said he never spoke of the incident again, not even to family. And a few whispered something darker: that he was told the truth. Years later, when George Filer finally spoke publicly about the incident, he did so carefully. He never claimed absolute certainty. He never named classified sources. But he stood by one thing: something non-human was involved that night. Whether it was extraterrestrial, interdimensional, or something unknown that had always been here, he couldn't say. But he knew what he had been told and what had been taken away. As the years passed, the Pine Barrens returned to silence. No official acknowledgement, no memorial, no explanation. But on clear nights, pilots still report strange lights over the forest, and guards still swear they hear footsteps beyond the fence. Fast, light, almost playful, as if something is still running. If the Fort Dix McGuire incident was real, and all credible signs suggest that something extraordinary did occur, then the most unsettling question isn't what was encountered that night. It's why it was there. Military installations are not random locations. They are among the most secure, monitored, and defended places on Earth. Radar coverage is constant. Armed patrols operate around the clock. Any intrusion is treated as a potential national security threat. Again and again, reports of unexplained encounters seem to center on these very locations. Why? One theory challenges the popular idea of extraterrestrial visitors entirely. What if the being shot that night wasn't from somewhere else, but had always been here? Some researchers believe these entities may exist in parallel environments, slipping into our reality only briefly. The Pine Barrens, with its unusual magnetic anomalies and sparse population, could act as a natural gateway. Military bases equipped with advanced radar and experimental technology might accidentally trigger these crossings. Not an invasion, an intersection. Another theory suggests intent. If the object seen hovering above the base was a controlled craft, then the being on the ground may have been conducting reconnaissance. Military installations house advanced weapon systems, nuclear materials, and classified research. From that perspective, the encounter wasn't random, it was interrupted. The rapid response, the transport aircraft, the immediate lockdown, the erasure of records points to one thing: containment, not of panic, but of knowledge. The most disturbing theory is also the most controversial. What if the being wasn't alien at all? What if it was engineered? Rumors persist of classified programs exploring human-unhuman hybrids, advanced biological drones, or remotely operated organisms designed for extreme environments. The being's efficient anatomy, its minimal biological waste, its resistance to injury, traits not of evolution but design. If true, the silence makes sense. Governments don't hide what they don't understand. They hide what they created. Decades have passed since the incident. Technology has advanced. Satellites blanket the planet. Cameras are everywhere. And yet, the reports continue. Strange lights near military zones, fast-moving figures beyond fences, objects that defy physics. The difference now is volume. Too many witnesses, too many leaked recordings, too many similar stories. Truth doesn't always arrive as a revelation. Careers end quietly. Reputations are questioned. Stories are dismissed as fiction. But the people involved that night, the guards, the officers, the witnesses, they didn't gain fame or fortune. They gained questions, questions that never left them. If something truly non-human was shot on a runway in New Jersey, if it was transported under armed guard to a classified facility, if the records were erased and the witnesses silenced, then the real mystery isn't whether we're alone. It's whether we've already crossed paths and simply chose not to look back. The pine barrens remain quiet, but forests have long memories. On certain nights when the wind moves just right, locals claim they still see lights drifting above the trees, slow, deliberate, searching, and sometimes they hear something running